The screech of tires was the first thing that registered, a high-pitched wail that cut through the steady rhythm of the rain hitting the pavement, and then came the sickening crunch of metal on metal that vibrated right through the soles of my sneakers. I was walking home from my shift at the diner, my backpack slung over one shoulder and my mind already drifting toward the pile of textbooks waiting for me on my kitchen table, but the sound snapped me back to reality instantly. I froze on the sidewalk, my heart hammering against my ribs as a black sedan careened around the corner, jumping the curb and slamming into a parked delivery truck with enough force to shatter the windshield. If slow-burn romance with high stakes is your thing, hit subscribe. Now back to the story. I knew I should run. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around, to sprint back toward the neon lights of the diner and call the police, but my feet felt like they were cemented to the wet concrete. The driver's door of the sedan swung open, and a man tumbled out, clutching his side, and that was when I saw the blood dark and slick against the gray rain. Two other cars pulled up behind the wreckage, blocking off the street, and men poured out of them like shadows, their movements disciplined and terrifyingly precise. I pressed myself back against the brick wall of the alleyway, praying that the darkness would swallow me whole, but I wasn't invisible enough. One of the men from the second car, a tall guy with a scar running down his neck, looked up and his eyes locked directly onto mine. Time seemed to stop, stretching out like a rubber band pulled too tight, and I knew with a cold, sinking certainty that I had just made the worst mistake of my life. He raised a gloved hand and pointed at me, shouting something that I couldn't hear over the sound of the rain and my own panicked breathing, and then they were coming for me. I turned to run, my sneakers slipping on the wet pavement as I scrambled for traction, but I wasn't fast enough. A heavy hand clamped down on my shoulder, spinning me around with a violence that made my head snap back, and I stared up into the face of a man who looked like he had killed before and would do it again without blinking. "Please," I gasped, my voice trembling so hard I could barely get the word out. "I didn't see anything, I swear." He didn't say a word, just shoved me hard against the brick wall, knocking the breath out of my lungs, and I braced myself for the pain I was sure was coming. But then, a voice cut through the chaos, calm, deep, and laced with an authority that made the other men freeze instantly. "Step away from her." The man holding me hesitated for a fraction of a second, his grip loosening just enough for me to suck in a ragged breath, and then he released me entirely, stepping back with his head bowed. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out underneath me, and looked up to see a figure walking through the rain toward me. He didn't run, he walked with a slow, deliberate stride as if the rain couldn't touch him, and as he stepped under the flickering street lamp I finally saw his face. It was a face that belonged on a Roman coin, sharp, angular, and utterly unforgiving. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my tuition, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders, and his eyes were dark and calculating, sweeping over me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. This wasn't just a thug, this was the man in charge, the one who gave the orders and watched them being carried out. He stopped in front of me, ignoring the chaos of the crash and the men waiting for his command, and crouched down so that we were eye level. Up close I could see a faint scar above his left eyebrow and the smell of expensive cologne mixed with something metallic like copper that made my stomach turn. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice low and smooth, devoid of any warmth. "Ilara," I whispered, terrified to look away from him. "Ilara Vance." He studied me for a long moment, his gaze dissecting me, and then he reached out. I flinched, expecting him to hurt me, but his fingers simply brushed a stray lock of wet hair away from my face, a touch that was surprisingly gentle considering the violence that surrounded us. "You're coming with me, Ilara," he said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "Get up." I didn't want to go, every part of me wanted to stay on that cold sidewalk and pretend this was a nightmare, but the look in his eyes told me that I didn't have a choice. I scrambled to my feet, my knees shaking so badly I had to brace myself against the wall, and he nodded to one of his men. "Bring her to the car. And clean this mess up." Before I could protest, strong hands were guiding me toward the third car, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows that looked like a hearse. I was ushered into the backseat, the leather cool against my damp skin, and the man with the scar climbed in beside me while the boss took the front passenger seat. As the car pulled away from the curb, leaving the wreckage and the flashing lights of the distant police sirens behind, I looked out the window and watched my old life disappear into the rain. We drove in silence for what felt like hours, the city lights blurring into streaks of color against the wet glass. I sat with my hands clenched in my lap, my mind racing with 1,000 terrifying scenarios, but the man beside me didn't speak, and the man in the front didn't look back. Eventually, the city skyline faded, replaced by the high walls and iron gates of the wealthy suburbs, and we turned onto a private road that wound its way up a steep hill. The car passed through massive gates that opened automatically at our approach and pulled up in front of a mansion that looked less like a home and more like a fortress. It was built from gray stone with tall windows and a sprawling porch, sitting alone on the peak of the hill like it was watching over the city below. "Get out," the boss said, opening his door before the driver could even get to it. I followed him out, the cold air hitting me again, and walked up the stone steps to the front door. He unlocked it with a keypad and ushered me inside, the heavy door clicking shut behind us with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. The interior of the house was just imposing as the exterior, with high ceilings, marble floors, and furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. "My name is Mateo," he said, turning to face me in the grand foyer, and for the first time I saw something flicker behind his eyes, something that looked almost like exhaustion. "You are safe here. No one will touch you." "Why am I here?" I asked, my voice sounding small in the vast empty space. "I told you I didn't see anything." "You saw enough to get yourself killed," he replied, walking past me into a living room that was dominated by a massive fireplace. "The men who attacked that car are enemies of mine. If they find you, they will use you to get to me. You stay here until I say otherwise." He didn't wait for a response, just unbuttoned his suit jacket and draped it over the back of a chair, rolling up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt to reveal forearms that were corded with muscle. I stood awkwardly near the doorway, not sure if I was allowed to move, to sit, or even to breathe too loudly. "Sit," he commanded, pointing to a sofa without looking at me. "I have work to do." I sat. For the next few hours, I watched him work. He sat at a desk in the corner of the room, surrounded by stacks of paper and a laptop that glowed in the dim light, speaking in low, rapid-fire Italian into a headset. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but the tone was clear, business, ruthless, and efficient. I spent the time studying him, trying to figure out what kind of man he was. He didn't look like a monster, but then again, monsters rarely did. Eventually, a woman appeared, a stern-looking older woman with gray hair pulled back into a tight bun. She didn't acknowledge me, just walked over to Mateo and whispered something in his ear. He nodded, glancing over at me for the first time in hours. "Show her to a room," he said, "and get her some clothes that actually fit." The woman, Mrs. G, I later learned, led me up a sweeping staircase and down a long hallway to a bedroom that was larger than my entire apartment. It had a huge four-poster bed, a balcony overlooking the city, and a bathroom that looked like a spa. On the bed laid a stack of clothes, jeans, sweaters, and underwear, all still with tags on them. "Mr. Morty does not like to be disturbed while he works," Mrs. G said, her voice clipped. "Dinner is at 7, don't be late." She left and I was alone. I took a long, hot shower, scrubbing the smell of rain and fear off my skin, and then pulled on a pair of the sweatpants and a hoodie that had been left for me. They were soft and warm, and for a moment I allowed myself to feel safe. But that safety was an illusion, I knew. I was a prisoner in a gilded cage, and the man downstairs held the key. I went back downstairs at 7, my stomach growling despite my anxiety. Mateo was already at the dining table, a long mahogany slab that could seat 20 people, sitting at the head with a glass of dark red wine in front of him. I sat at the other end, feeling ridiculous, but he didn't comment. Mrs. G brought out dinner: steak, roasted vegetables, and potatoes, and I realized how hungry I actually was. We ate in silence, the only sound the clinking of silverware against china. I wanted to ask him questions about who he was, about what happened tonight, about when I could go home, but the tension radiating off him was enough to keep my mouth shut. "You're a student," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. I looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "I had you checked out," he said, taking a sip of his wine. "You work at the diner, you study pre-law at City College, and your rent is overdue. You have a sick grandmother who requires expensive medication." I felt a flush of anger rise in my chest. "You had me investigated." "I do not let unknown variables into my house, Alara," he replied calmly, setting his glass down. "Knowledge is power, you would do well to remember that." "I'm not a variable," I shot back, my voice shaking slightly. "I'm a person. I have a life that I need to get back to." "Your life is currently on hold," he said, his eyes darkening, "and as for your problems, consider them solved." "What does that mean?" "It means your rent is paid," he said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. "It means your grandmother's medical bills are covered. It means you no longer have to work at that diner. You are my guest now, and I take care of what is mine." I stared at him, stunned. I should have been grateful, I knew, but his arrogance was suffocating. "I didn't ask for your money." "No," he agreed, meeting my gaze, "but you have it nonetheless. Eat your food." I finished my meal in silence, my mind spinning. He was dangerous, controlling, and terrifyingly powerful, but he had also just erased the mountain of debt that was crushing me. It didn't make sense, and the more I tried to figure him out, the more confused I became. Over the next few days, I fell into a strange routine. Matteo worked most of the day, locked in his office or taking meetings in the city, and I was left to explore the house. It was filled with books, thousands of them lining the walls of the library and spilling out onto tables. I spent hours reading, trying to lose myself in stories that were far less complicated than my reality. One afternoon, I wandered into the library to find Matteo sitting in a leather armchair, a gun disassembled on the table in front of him. He was cleaning it with a rag, his movements methodical and hypnotic. I froze in the doorway, my breath catching in my throat, but he didn't look up. "You can come in," he said, his voice low. "It won't go off unless I pull the trigger." I walked slowly into the room, keeping a respectful distance, and watched him. He fit the pieces together with a practiced ease, the metal clicking softly in the quiet room. It should have scared me, seeing a lethal weapon in the hands of a man like him, but instead I found myself fascinated. There was no malice in his actions, only a calm competence. "Do you do that often?" I asked, sitting on the edge of the sofa across from him. "Often enough," he replied, sliding the magazine into the grip with a sharp snap. "A man in my position cannot afford to be unprepared." "Is that why you took me?" I asked, emboldened by the quiet atmosphere. "Because you were unprepared." He looked up then, his eyes locking onto mine, and for a second the mask slipped. I saw a flash of something deep and painful, a shadow that crossed his face before he could hide it behind a wall of indifference. "I took you because I was not willing to add your death to the list of things I have to atone for," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Now, read your book, I have business to attend to." He stood up and walked out, leaving the gun on the table. I stared at it for a long time, the cold metal gleaming in the afternoon light, and realized that Matteo Morti was a man carrying a weight that would have crushed anyone else. That night the atmosphere in the house shifted. A storm was brewing outside, thunder rumbling in the distance, and the air inside felt heavy with anticipation. I found Matteo on the balcony off the living room, staring out at the city lights below, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked like a statue carved from stone, alone in the world. I walked out onto the balcony, the wind whipping my hair around my face, and stood beside him. He didn't look at me, but I sensed that he knew I was there. "My mother was killed in front of me," he said suddenly, his voice barely audible over the wind. "I was 10 years old. We were coming home from the opera and men stopped our car. They dragged her out and shot her in the street. They left me there, screaming in the gutter." I felt the blood drain from my face. I reached out without thinking, my hand resting gently on his forearm. His muscles were rock hard under my fingers, tense and coiled like a spring. "I'm so sorry, Matteo," I whispered. He turned to me then, his eyes filled with a darkness that sucked the air right out of my lungs. "That is the world I belong to, Alara. That is the world you are now a part of. There is no escape for me, and there is no going back for you." "I'm not afraid of you," I said, and to my surprise I realized it was the truth. "You should be," he murmured, but he didn't pull away. We stood there for a long time, the thunder getting closer, and I felt a strange connection forming between us, a bond forged in violence and silence. He was a killer, a criminal, a monster to most people, but in that moment he was just a broken man sharing his pain with the only person who hadn't run away. The next morning he woke me up early. "Get dressed," he said, standing in the doorway of my room. "We are going to the gym." I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes and pulled on some workout clothes, wondering what on earth he was planning. The gym was located in the basement of the house, a windowless room filled with weights, punching bags, and mats. Matteo was already there, tape wrapped around his knuckles. "You need to learn to defend yourself," he said, tossing me a pair of gloves. "I cannot be everywhere at once." I pulled on the gloves, my heart racing. "I don't know how to fight." "I will teach you." For the next hour he put me through my paces. He showed me how to stand, how to throw a punch, and how to block. He was patient but firm, correcting my stance with a gentle nudge of his foot or a tap on my shoulder. By the end of it, I was sweating and exhausted, but I felt stronger than I had in days. We were standing on the mats, sparring lightly when I stumbled and fell. I landed hard on my back, the breath knocked out of me, and looked up to see him looming over me. He reached down a hand to help me up, and I took it. As he pulled me to my feet, our bodies collided chest to chest, and for a moment neither of us moved. I could feel the heat radiating off him, smell the scent of soap and sweat, and see the rapid rise and fall of his chest. His hand lingered on mine, his thumb brushing over my knuckles, and the air between us crackled with an electricity that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "You're doing well," he said, his voice husky. "Thanks," I breathed, unable to look away from his mouth. He released my hand abruptly and stepped back, the moment shattering like glass. That is enough for today, go shower. I walked away on shaky legs, my heart pounding a rhythm that had nothing to do with the exercise. I was falling for him. I was falling for the Mafia boss who had kidnapped me, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. 2 days later, the peace of the estate was shattered. I was in the library tracing the spine of a first edition Hemingway when the front door of the estate didn't just open, it exploded inward. The sound was a thunderclap that dwarfed the storm brewing in my head. Wood splintered, glass shattered, and a roar of masculine violence sucked the air out of the room. I dropped the book, the heavy thud lost in the chaos. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat locked up, primal instinct freezing my muscles as heavy boots thundered across the marble foyer. Voices barked orders in Italian, sharp and guttural, nothing like the smooth, dangerous cadence of Matteo's tone. Find her, don't let the bastard get to the roof. I scrambled backward, knocking over a stack of hardcovers, my mind racing. This wasn't Matteo. This was an invasion. I ducked behind a heavy oak desk just as the library doors were kicked open. 2 men swept in, their faces covered by black balaclavas, assault rifles raised. They moved with military precision, scanning the room left to right. I pressed my back against the cold wood of the desk, squeezing my eyes shut, praying my heart wasn't beating loud enough to give me away. Clear, the word wasn't spoken, but the shift in their footsteps told me they were moving deeper into the room. I had seconds. I crawled toward the fireplace, hoping to find a servant's bell or a heavy poker, anything. My hand brushed against the cold metal of the andirons. I wrapped my fingers around the heavy iron, my grip slippery with sweat. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around, swinging the poker with every ounce of strength my terror could muster. It connected with a knee, eliciting a grunt of pain, but a hand shot out, catching my wrist in a crushing grip. The man was huge, his eyes dark and void of humanity behind the mask. Got you, he sneered, his accent thick, harsher than Matteo's. He twisted my wrist, and the poker clattered to the floor. I cried out as he hauled me up, my feet dangling off the ground. He wasn't here to kill me, not yet. He dragged me toward the shattered foyer, and that was when I saw the blood. Matteo's men, Dante, the stoic guard from the gate, and 2 others I didn't know were dead on the floor. The marble was a slick crimson canvas. The sight of it turned my stomach, a cold, sickening wave of nausea rolling through me. Matteo, I screamed, the tearing from my throat raw and desperate. Quiet, Patana, the man holding me barked, shoving me toward the front door, but we didn't make it to the exit. A gunshot rang out, deafeningly loud in the confined space, and the man holding me jerked, a spray of red mist painting the side of my face. He dropped to his knees, then slumped forward, dead. I scrambled back, wiping the warm, sticky liquid from my cheek, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Matteo stood at the top of the grand staircase. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in dark trousers and a white dress shirt that was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with tension. In his right hand he held a suppressed pistol, steady as a rock. He looked like an avenging angel, beautiful and terrifying in his wrath. "Ilara, down," he commanded, not a request, an order. I hit the floor, covering my head as the foyer turned into a war zone. Matteo moved with a fluid, predatory grace that was hypnotic. He didn't seek cover, he became death. He descended the stairs, firing with calculated precision. 2 more attackers rushed from the living room, and Matteo dropped them both before they could raise their weapons. Thump, thump, bodies hitting the floor. He reached the bottom, stepping over the corpse of the man who had grabbed me. He didn't look at them, he only looked at me. "Are you hit?" His voice was devoid of emotion, a flat line that scared me more than the shouting. "No," I whispered, trembling so hard my teeth chattered. "No, I'm okay." He reached down, hauling me up with a bruising grip on my arm. "Stay behind me." We moved through the house, but it wasn't over. The sound of tires screeching outside signaled that more were coming, or perhaps the ones who had breached the perimeter were fleeing. Matteo pulled me into the kitchen, toward the pantry, but stopped dead. A man was waiting there. He was older, graying at the temples, wearing a tailored suit that looked expensive but was rumpled from a fight. He held a knife, not a gun. "Matteo," the man said, sounding almost bored. "The Russian sends his regards. He wants the girl. He thinks she knows where the ledger is." "I don't have a ledger," I blurted out, terrified. Matteo ignored me, his eyes fixed on the man. "Victor, I wondered when your master would stop sending boys and come himself." Victor smiled, a thin, cruel slash of a mouth. "I am not the master, I am the message. Give us the girl and you walk away. Keep her, and we burn this house down with you inside." Matteo laughed, a dark, humorless sound. "You think you can burn me?" Before Victor could move, Matteo moved. It was a blur of motion, a kick to the wrist that sent the knife flying, followed by a brutal elbow to the man's throat. Victor crumpled, gasping for air, clutching his neck. Matteo didn't kill him. Instead, he grabbed the man by the hair and slammed his face into the granite countertop. Once, twice. On the third time, Victor went limp. Mateo straightened, breathing hard, blood splattered on his white shirt like dark ink. He looked at me, and for a second the killer faded, replaced by a man on the edge of panic. "We have to go, now." He dragged me out the back, through the mud and the rain, toward the garage. He threw me into the passenger seat of a black Aston Martin, peeling out before I even had my seatbelt on. The tires screamed on the wet pavement as we fishtailed out of the driveway, leaving the sanctuary of the estate behind us. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Somewhere they won't look," he said, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. "Somewhere safe." We drove in silence for an hour, leaving the city limits, the towering skyscrapers giving way to the industrial wasteland on the outskirts. The rain lashed against the windshield, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the deluge. My heart rate had slowed, but the adrenaline still hummed in my veins, making me jittery. Mateo's phone buzzed on the console. He glanced at it, then picked it up. "Dante," he barked. I froze. I had seen Dante's body. "Boss, it's Rico," the voice on the other end said, sounding breathless. "Dante is dead. They hit the estate hard. We lost 3 more guys at the gate. Who has her?" "I have her," Mateo said, his jaw tight. "Did you get the license plates?" "Partial." "It's the Volkovs, boss, the Russians. They're making a move for the territory. Keep the family in the safe house. Do not let anyone out until I say so. I'm going to the warehouse." "The warehouse, but—" "Do it." Mateo threw the phone onto the dashboard. He swerved the car sharply to the right, taking an exit ramp that led to a maze of abandoned factories and rusted shipping containers. "The warehouse?" I asked, hugging myself against the chill of the air conditioning. "Is that safe?" "It is the last place they would look for us," he said, though his tone was grim. "It is where I keep the things I don't want the police to find. No one goes there but me." We pulled up to a corrugated metal building that looked like it had been condemned a decade ago. The windows were blacked out, the door was reinforced steel. Mateo punched a code into a keypad, and the heavy door groaned open. We drove inside, and the door rolled down behind us, plunging us into darkness before he flicked on the industrial lights overhead. The space was vast and empty, save for a few crates in the corner and a black SUV parked in the center. It smelled of oil, dust, and old metal. Mateo killed the engine and sat there, his hands still gripping the wheel, his head bowed. "Mateo," I reached out, touching his shoulder. He flinched, then turned to me. The look in his eyes made me recoil. It was a mix of rage, guilt, and a terrifying possessiveness. "They shouldn't have touched my house," he whispered. "They shouldn't have come for you." "I'm okay," I said, though I knew I was lying. I wasn't okay. I had seen men die. I had felt a man's blood on my face. I was kidnapped by a Mafia boss driving to a secret hideout. I was the furthest thing from okay. He got out of the car and came around to my side, opening the door. He didn't offer his hand this time. He simply picked me up, cradling me against his chest, and carried me toward a metal staircase in the corner of the warehouse. "Put me down, I can walk," I protested, but he ignored me. He carried me up to a loft area, an office space that overlooked the main floor. It was sparse, just a desk, a couch, and a small bathroom. He set me down on the couch and immediately went to the window, peering out through the slats of the blinds. "Stay here," he ordered. "Do not leave this room. Do not open the door for anyone but me." He began to pace the room, pulling his phone out again, dialing furiously. "I want the head of the Volkov operation on a platter," he snarled into the phone. "Find the leak. Someone told them I was keeping her at the estate. Find them." I sat on the leather couch, hugging my knees to my chest, watching him. The man who had cleaned his gun with such calm precision was gone. This was the Don, the ruthless boss. The man who ordered hits with the same casualness I ordered a coffee. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. I scrubbed them against my jeans, trying to get rid of the phantom feeling of the dead man's blood, but it was no use. I felt contaminated. Suddenly, Mateo stopped pacing. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his face softened. He saw the terror. He saw the way I was scrubbing my hands. He ended the call without saying goodbye and walked over to me. He knelt in front of the couch, taking my hands in his. His hands were warm, rough, and steady. "You are in shock," he said quietly. "I saw them die," I whispered, tears finally spilling over. "Dante, he just opened the door and they shot him. He didn't even have a chance." Mateo squeezed my hands. "Dante knew the risks. He died protecting you. He died a soldier's death." "That doesn't make it okay," I cried, pulling my hands away. "He was a person, Mateo. He had a family, and now he's gone because of me. Because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time." Mateo caught my face in his hands, forcing me to look at him. His grip was firm, bordering on painful, but his eyes were intense, burning into mine. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and commanding. "This is not because of you, this is because of me, because of who I am. The Volkovs are testing my strength, they are using you to get to me. But I promise you this, Alara, I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let them touch you again." His words were meant to comfort, but they only chilled me further. He was declaring war, a war for me. "Why?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why am I worth all of this? I'm just a nurse, I'm nobody." Matteo stared at me, his thumb brushing away a tear that had tracked through the blood on my cheek. He leaned in closer, his face inches from mine. The air between us crackled, heavy with the scent of gunpowder, rain, and his own unique musk. "You are not nobody," he growled. "You are the woman who saw me at my weakest and didn't run. You are the woman who stood in my library and looked at a monster and saw a man. You are mine, Alara, and I protect what is mine." He stood up abruptly, the moment broken, the intensity shifting back to cold calculation. "I need to clean up," he said, looking at his shirt. "And you need a shower, the bathroom is through there, there are fresh towels in the cabinet, lock the door." He walked away, stripping off his bloody shirt as he went, revealing the sculpted muscles of his back, mapped with old scars. I watched him go, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. I went into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I turned on the shower, letting the water heat up until the room was steamy. I stripped off my clothes, throwing them into the corner as if they were contaminated. I stepped under the spray, letting the hot water scour my skin. I scrubbed myself until I was raw, trying to wash away the memory of the attack, the sight of the bodies, the feeling of being hunted. But the water couldn't wash away the realization that had settled in my gut. My old life was gone. I couldn't go back to the ER. I couldn't go back to my apartment. Even if Matteo let me go, the Russians would find me. I was a loose end, a witness. I was trapped in his world. I stayed in the shower until the water ran cold. When I got out, I found a stack of clothes on the closed toilet lid, one of Matteo's t-shirts and a pair of sweatpants that were rolled at the waist. They were clean and smelled like him, sandalwood and starch. I dressed, the fabric soft against my skin, and walked back into the main room. Matteo was sitting at the desk, shirtless, a map of the city spread out in front of him. He was marking locations with a red marker, his movements precise and deliberate. He looked up as I entered, his eyes scanning me. The shirt hung to my mid-thighs, exposing my legs. I felt a flash of self-consciousness under his gaze, but I held my ground. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Cleaner," I admitted. I walked over to the desk, looking at the map. Red X's were scattered across the city. "What are you doing?" "Identifying their safe houses," he said, tapping a marker on the desk. "The Volkovs operate out of the docks mostly, but they have eyes everywhere. If they hit the estate, they have surveillance." He stood up and walked over to a mini fridge I hadn't noticed, taking out 2 bottles of water. He handed one to me. "Drink." I unscrewed the cap and took a long drink, the cool water soothing my parched throat. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, leaning back against the desk, crossing his arms over his chest. "We wait." "Wait for what?" "For them to make a mistake, or for me to force their hand." He looked tired, the lines around his eyes were deeper, the shadows darker. The adrenaline was fading, leaving the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. "You need to sleep," I said softly. "I don't sleep when there are threats," he replied automatically. "You're no good to me dead," I countered, using his own logic against him. "If you want to protect me, you need to be sharp, not exhausted." He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, followed by a grudging respect. "You have a point, nurse." He gestured toward the couch. "You take the couch, I'll take the chair." "I'm not putting you out of your bed," I argued. "There's enough room for both of us, it's a big couch." Matteo stiffened. "Alara." "I'm terrified, Matteo," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I don't want to be alone right now, please." I saw the struggle on his face, the war between his duty to protect me from himself and his own desire to be close to me. In the end, the desire won. Or maybe it was just the knowledge that I was right, we were both clinging to each other in the wreckage of our lives. "Fine," he grunted, "but stay on your side." I lay down on the left side of the couch, curling up against the cushions. Matteo turned off the overhead lights, leaving only a small lamp on the desk burning. The room was plunged into shadows, the rain drumming a relentless rhythm against the metal roof. He lay down on the other side, stiff as a board, putting a deliberate distance between us, but the couch wasn't that big. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, a magnetic pull that was impossible to ignore. We lay in the silence for a long time. I thought he was asleep, his breathing slow and even, but then he spoke. My father was the one who ordered the hit on my mother, he said into the darkness. I turned over, facing him in the dim light. What? He didn't pull the trigger himself, but he gave the order. She was going to take me and leave. She was going to take me away from this life, and he killed her for it. The confession hangs in the air, heavier than the silence, heavier than the dampness that seeps into the room. It's a jagged shard of history, sharp enough to cut. I stare at the back of his head, at the way his dark hair curls slightly at the nape of his neck, unable to reconcile the man who held me while I cried with the boy who watched his father order his mother's execution. He killed her to keep you, I whisper, the horror of it settling like cold lead in my stomach. To keep you in the family business. He killed her because she was a thief, Mateo corrects, his voice devoid of inflection, flat and dead. She was trying to steal his heir, his legacy. In his eyes, that was a betrayal worthy of death. Love is a liability, Alara. It makes you weak, it makes you predictable. He taught me that lesson before I was even 10 years old. I shift on the cushions, the movement loud in the quiet room. Is that why you sent me away, after the library, because I was a liability? He turns over then, the springs of the old couch groaning under his weight. His eyes are open, reflecting the faint amber glow of the desk lamp. They aren't cold anymore. They are fractured, revealing the cracks in the armor he wears so seamlessly. I sent you away because I wanted to break you, he says, the honesty brutal. I wanted to scare you enough that you'd run. I thought if you saw the blood, if you understood the price, you'd disappear. But you didn't. You came back, and now. He trails off, reaching out a hand. His fingers brush a stray lock of hair away from my forehead, the touch so gentle it contradicts the violence of his words. Now I realize that my father was wrong about one thing. Love isn't a weakness if it gives you something to fight for, but it is still a liability. It is a handle for your enemies to grab. The air between us shifts, charged with a new kind of tension. It's not just fear anymore, it's understanding. I see the man beneath the monster, a man shaped by cruelty, desperate to control a world that has always been chaotic and bloody. I'm not afraid of the fight, Mateo, I say, my voice steadying. I'm afraid of being the reason you lose. A ghost of a smile touches his lips, humorless and grim. You won't be the reason I lose, you will be the reason I win. Sleep now, Alara, we move at dawn. He turns his back to me again, but the distance between us feels smaller. I close my eyes, exhaustion finally dragging me down, but my sleep is fitful. I dream of rain that turns to blood, of Dante's empty eyes, and of a dark room where a faceless man holds a scalpel to my throat. I wake to the sound of a phone buzzing insistently against wood. It's still dark outside, the room a landscape of shadows and gray light filtering through the boarded-up windows. Mateo is already up. He's standing by the window, a silhouette against the faint dawn light, dressed in a fresh black suit. He holds the phone to his ear, his posture rigid. I don't care about the shipment, he snaps, his voice low and dangerous. Burn it. If the docks are compromised, you purge everything. Yes, everyone, leave no witnesses. He ends the call and shoves the phone into his pocket. He turns, sensing me awake. Get dressed, he orders. We're moving. Where? I ask, sitting up. The blanket slides down and I clutch it to my chest, suddenly cold. The safe house isn't safe anymore. My contact at the morgue just confirmed that 2 of their enforcers were seen asking questions about a Jane Doe admitted last night. They know you're alive, they know you're with me. I scramble off the couch, grabbing my clothes from the day before. They're stiff with dried blood and grime. I hesitate, looking at the pile. I can't wear these, I say. Mateo walks over to a duffel bag I hadn't noticed near the door. He tosses a bundle of fabric at me. I had Luca bring supplies while you slept. Jeans, a sweater, boots. It's not designer, but it's clean. I retreat to the bathroom to change. The clothes are a little big. He clearly guessed my size based on sight alone, but they are warm and sturdy. When I come out, Mateo is strapping a shoulder holster on over his shirt. The black leather contrasts starkly with the white fabric, the cold metal of the gun catching the light. It's a visceral reminder of who he is. He catches me staring and adjusts his jacket to cover the weapon. Ready. As I'll ever be. We move to the door. He stops me with a hand on my arm. Stay close. Do not look anyone in the eye. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to get down, you get down. Do you understand? Yes. We step out into the morning. The air is crisp, smelling of wet asphalt and garbage. The city is waking up, the distant hum of traffic a stark contrast to the silence of the warehouse. A black SUV is idling at the curb, the engine purring low. Luca is in the driver's seat. He nods at us as we approach, his face grim. Mateo opens the rear door for me, ushering me inside before sliding in beside me. The interior smells of leather and gun oil. Report, Mateo says as soon as the doors slam shut. The Volkovs are hitting our fronts, Luca says, accelerating smoothly away from the curb. They hit a gambling den in Little Italy an hour ago. 3 dead. It's a message, boss. They're escalating. Or they're distracted, Matteo muses, staring out the tinted window. They're throwing chaos at the perimeter to see where we flinch. They think I'm hiding at the estate. They think I'm fortifying my position. Are you? I'm fortifying her, Matteo corrects. That's why we aren't going to the estate, we're going to the hospital. I freeze, my hand gripping the door handle. What? Why, that's the first place they'll look. Exactly, Matteo says, turning to look at me. His eyes are calculating, sharp. It's the last place they expect me to take you. They think I'll hide you in a fortress, Alara. They don't think I'll take you back to the scene of the crime. That's insane, I breathe. I can't go back there. Everyone knows me. Security, the other nurses. Security has been compromised, Matteo interrupts. But Dr. Aris is loyal. He owes me a debt. He's the chief of surgery. He can get us into the private wing without going through the main lobby. We need your files, the ones on the patient who died the night you were taken, the one who whispered to you. I remember the man, the John Doe who had grabbed my wrist, his lips brushing my ear, whispering a string of numbers before he coded. I had written it off as delirium, until Matteo told me those numbers were a bank account for a shell company used to launder Volkov money. The records are digital, I say. They're password protected. But you know the system, Matteo counters. You know the backdoors, you know how the nurses cover for each other. You can get us into that terminal. And if we get caught? Then we fight, he says simply. He reaches over, covering my hand with his. His thumb strokes my knuckles, a brief, grounding touch. I won't let anything happen to you, but we need that account number. It's the only way to track where the money is going, and money always tells the truth. If we find the source, we find the mole. The drive to the hospital is a blur of gray buildings and tense silence. My heart hammers against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I haven't been to the ER since the night I was taken. The thought of walking through those double doors, smelling the antiseptic and the bleach, makes my stomach churn. Luca pulls into the service entrance behind the hospital, parking next to the dumpsters. It's a restricted area, usually for ambulances and deliveries. Wait here, Matteo commands Luca. He opens his door and steps out into the damp morning air, scanning the alleyway before opening my door. Keep your head down. We slip through a side door that Matteo unlocks with a key he shouldn't have. The corridor is dimly lit, the smell of stale coffee and floor wax instantly recognizable. My instincts as a nurse kick in, the rhythm of the hospital, the hum of the HVAC system, the specific quality of the silence in the back halls. We take the service elevator up to the 4th floor, the administrative wing. It's early enough that the floor is mostly deserted, just the cleaning staff buffing the linoleum floors. Matteo moves like a predator, silent and fluid. He checks every corner before we turn. I stick close to his back, my breath shallow. We reach the records department. It's a small office lined with filing cabinets and a row of computer terminals. The door is locked. Matteo doesn't bother with the handle. He pulls a small tool from his pocket and jiggles the lock. It clicks open in seconds. We slip inside and he locks the door behind us. You have 2 minutes, Matteo says, leaning against the door to watch the hallway. I sit at the main terminal. The screen is black, reflecting my tired face. I type in my nurse ID number. My fingers shake, but muscle memory takes over. Access denied. I try again. Access denied. They've deactivated my clearance, I whisper, panic rising. Think, Alara, Matteo snaps, his voice low but urgent. How do the nurses get around the system when they forget their passwords? There's a master override for the admin on duty, I say, my mind racing, but I don't have the code. Guess. I can't just. Guess, he barks, stepping away from the door. I close my eyes, trying to remember the codes I've seen Dr. Aris type in. He's a creature of habit. He uses the same code for the narcotic lock. I type in 0419. The screen flickers. Welcome, Dr. Aris. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I pull up the patient database. I type in the date of the attack. I scroll through the list of trauma admits. Doe John, room 4. I open the file. My heart stops. The chart is empty. The medical history, the vitals, the nursing notes, all of it is gone. It's a blank template. They scrubbed it, I say, turning to look at Matteo. Someone wiped the record. Matteo is beside me in a stride, his hand slamming onto the desk. Are you sure? Yes, look, it's blank, but I lean closer to the screen. There's a metadata log. Every time a file is accessed or modified, it leaves a digital footprint. I pull up the log. The last modification was made at 3:00 a.m. Who did it? Matteo asks. I click the user ID. User M. Russo. Russo, Matteo breathes the name like a curse. Mario Russo, he's a floor supervisor. He's also a made man with the Volkov family. He works here, I ask, shocked. Mario Russo was the guy who always brought donuts for the night shift, the guy who complained about his back pain. He's been embedded in the hospital for 5 years, Matteo says, straightening up. He's their eyes and ears inside. He's the one who told them you were a witness. The realization hits me like a physical blow. I wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was sold out by a man I worked alongside. We need to go, Matteo says, his hand going to his gun. If he's scrubbing files, he's close. He pulls me up from the chair. We move to the door, but before Matteo can open it, the handle turns. We freeze. Matteo pushes me back into the corner of the room behind a filing cabinet. He flattens himself against the wall beside the door, his gun drawn and raised. The door opens. A man in blue scrubs steps in. He's holding a clipboard. It's Mario Russo. He looks tired, his face unshaven. He locks the door behind him and walks toward the desk, muttering to himself. Stupid system, always crashing. He doesn't see us. He sits down at the terminal and starts typing. Matteo moves. It's so fast I barely register the motion. 1 second he's against the wall, the next he's behind Mario, his arm locking around the man's neck, dragging him out of the chair. Mario gags, his legs kicking out, knocking the clipboard to the floor. Matteo leans down, his lips close to Mario's ear. Hello, Mario, Matteo whispers. Did you miss me? Mario's eyes bulge. He tries to claw at Matteo's arm, but Matteo's grip is iron. Where is the ledger? Matteo asks. The hard copy, I know you keep one. Mario chokes out a sound, shaking his head. Wrong answer, Matteo says. He tightens his grip. Mario's face turns purple. Wait, I gasp, stepping out from behind the cabinet. Matteo, you'll kill him. Matteo doesn't look at me. That's the point. He can't talk if he's dead, I say, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the terror clawing at my throat. Let him breathe for a second. Matteo hesitates, then loosens his grip slightly. Mario sucks in a ragged, wheezing breath, coughing violently. In the basement, Mario gasps. Storage, B locker, 42. Thank you, Matteo says. He pulls a knife from his boot, a serrated blade that glints in the fluorescent light. No, I scream. Matteo doesn't stab him. He grabs Mario by the hair and slams his head forward into the desk. Mario goes limp, sliding to the floor unconscious. Matteo straightens up, wiping the handle of the knife on his pant leg. He's lucky you were here. I usually don't leave witnesses. He looks at me, and for a moment I see the ruthless killer he's rumored to be, but then his expression shifts, the hardness softening into concern. Are you okay? I nod, my hand over my mouth. Yeah. We have the location, let's go. We step over Mario's body and leave the room. The hallway is still empty. We head for the service elevators again, but as we turn the corner, the elevator at the end of the hall dings. The doors slide open. 4 men step out. They aren't wearing scrubs. They're wearing dark coats, their hands buried in their pockets. They don't look like visitors. They look like wolves. Matteo stops, pushing me behind him. Run, he says. Matteo. Run, he roars, shoving me toward the stairwell. I don't argue. I turn and sprint for the stairwell door. I hear the shout behind me, the sound of footsteps pounding on the linoleum, and then the crack of a gunshot. The bullet impacts the wall next to my head, sending chips of plaster flying into my face. I scream, fumbling with the heavy door handle. I throw my weight against it and stumble into the stairwell. I take the stairs 2 at a time, descending as fast as I can. I can hear the chaos above, shouting, more gunshots, the sickening thud of bodies hitting the floor. I reach the ground floor and burst through the door into the lobby. It's pandemonium. Patients are screaming, security guards are running toward the elevators with their hands on their belts. I don't stop. I run for the sliding glass doors at the front entrance. I see Luca's SUV through the glass, double parked right on the curb. Luca is leaning out the window, waving frantically at me. I push through the doors, the cool morning air hitting my face. I'm 10 feet from the car when a black van screeches around the corner, blocking Luca's path. 2 men jump out of the back of the van. They aren't Volkovs. They're wearing tactical gear, masks covering their faces. Ilara, Luca yells, reaching for his gun, but he's too slow. One of the men raises a taser. The prongs hit Luca in the neck. He convulses and slumps over the steering wheel. The other man comes for me. I turn to run back toward the hospital, but Matteo is there. He bursts through the doors behind me, his chest heaving, blood splattered across his white shirt. He sees the van, sees Luca, sees the man lunging for me. He doesn't hesitate. He raises his gun and fires 2 shots. The man attacking me goes down, a red blossom spreading on his chest. The second tactical guy fires at Matteo. Matteo spins, taking cover behind a concrete pillar. Get in the car, Mateo shouts at me. The driver's side door of the van slides open. A woman steps out. She's tall, blonde, wearing a tailored suit that looks out of place in the violence. She holds a silenced pistol in her hand. "Stop," she screams, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Stop or she dies." She aims the gun directly at me. I freeze, trapped between the SUV and the van. Mateo freezes behind the pillar, his gun still raised. "Let her go and you walk away," Mateo finishes, his voice dropping an octave, turning the air around us to ice. "You touch her and I don't just kill you. I eradicate your bloodline. I burn your organization to the ground and salt the earth." The woman in the suit doesn't flinch. She has dead eyes, the kind I've seen in trauma rooms right before we call the time of death. "You're in no position to make threats, Mateo. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and your driver is currently drooling on the steering wheel. Give us the girl and you keep your territory. We only want the witness." "I am not a witness," I say, my voice trembling but audible. "I'm a nurse. I don't know anything." The woman's gaze snaps to me, analyzing me like a specimen under a microscope. "You know enough to be a liability, and right now liabilities are bad for business. Get in the van." "No," Mateo says. He moves before I can blink. He doesn't step out from behind the pillar, he fires through it. The concrete explodes, dust and debris clouding the air, providing a split second of cover. He uses it. He lunges from the haze, closing the distance between the pillar and the van with terrifying speed. The woman fires, but she's shooting at a ghost. The bullet pings off the pavement near Mateo's boot. He's on her before she can rack the slide. He doesn't use his gun. He uses his momentum, slamming his shoulder into her chest and driving her back into the side of the van. The impact sounds like a car crash. The second tactical guy, the one Mateo shot earlier, is groaning on the asphalt, clutching his chest. The driver of the van tries to accelerate, but Mateo's free hand shoots out, grabbing the woman by the throat and shoving her toward the open door. "Drive," she chokes out, clawing at Mateo's hand. The van peels away, the tires smoking, the woman dragging Mateo a few steps before she loses her grip and falls. She tumbles onto the road, rolling dangerously close to the spinning tires, before scrambling to her feet and sprinting toward a black sedan parked down the block. Mateo doesn't chase her. He turns to me, his chest heaving, blood, a mix of his own and others, splattered across his jaw. "Get in the SUV, now." I scramble for the back door of Luca's car, throwing myself inside. Mateo jumps into the driver's seat, stepping over Luca's unconscious legs. He checks the pulse in Luca's neck, his jaw tight. "He's alive," Mateo grunts, shoving Luca into the passenger seat and slamming the door. "Bastards used a high-voltage stun gun. He'll be out for an hour." He throws the gear shift into drive and floors the gas. The SUV lurches forward, jumping the curb, and we tear down the street, leaving the hospital, the chaos, and the woman in the suit behind. The silence in the car is heavy, broken only by the ragged sound of my own breathing. I grip the handle above the door, my knuckles white. I look at Mateo. His hands are steady on the wheel, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror with predatory focus. "Who was that?" I ask, the adrenaline finally starting to crash, leaving me cold and shaking. "Irina Volkov," Mateo says, his voice flat. "The Pakhin's daughter. She runs the human trafficking side of their operation. She's a snake with a law degree. She called me a liability. To them, everyone is a liability. To me." He glances at me in the mirror, his eyes dark, intense. "You are the only thing that matters." The words hang in the air, heavy and terrifying. I don't know how to respond. I just watched him slam a woman into a van and threaten to erase her family tree. I watched him knock Mario Russo unconscious without a second thought, but I also watched him step between me and a gun without hesitation. "Where are we going?" I ask. "Somewhere safe," he says. "The hospital is compromised. Russo gave us up, which means the Volkovs know everything we know. They know we found the ledger location. We have to get to it before they do." He takes a sharp right, weaving through traffic, heading toward the industrial outskirts of the city. The skyline fades behind us, replaced by gray warehouses and rusted chain-link fences. "You're going back there?" I ask. "To the hospital basement." "No, I'm taking you to the warehouse. You stay with Luca. I go to the hospital." "I'm not staying behind," I say, the words out of my mouth before I can think them through. Mateo slams on the brakes. We screech to a halt on the side of a desolate road. He turns in his seat, facing me, his expression thunderous. "You are not a soldier, Alara. You are a nurse. You almost died today because of me. You are not going into a war zone." "I'm already in a war zone, Mateo," I shout back, surprising myself. "They came for me at the hospital. They came for me in the street. There is no behind. If I stay with Luca, I'm a target. If I go with you, at least I can help. I know the hospital layout. I know where Storage B is. I can get us in without tripping the alarms. He stares at me, his jaw working. He looks at Luca, slumped in the passenger seat, then back at me. He sees the resolve in my eyes. He knows I'm right. If you get hurt, he says, his voice low, dangerous, there will be no place on this earth where they can hide from me, including you. Just drive, I whisper. He turns back to the wheel and floors it again. We arrive at the warehouse 20 minutes later. It's a massive, cavernous building, the windows blacked out, the exterior covered in graffiti. Matteo pulls the SUV inside a massive steel door, hitting a remote to lower it behind us. The interior is surprisingly clean. Concrete floors, high ceilings, a living area set up with leather couches and a kitchenette that looks like it belongs in a luxury apartment. There's an arsenal on a long table against the wall, guns, knives, ammunition clips laid out with surgical precision. Matteo pulls Luca out of the car and carries him to a couch, laying him down gently. He checks his pulse again. He'll be fine, Matteo says, mostly to himself. He strips off his blood-stained shirt, tossing it onto a metal chair, revealing a torso mapped in old scars and hard, lean muscle. He walks over to the arsenal and starts strapping on a Kevlar vest. I stand in the middle of the room, feeling out of place in my scrubs, still smelling of antiseptic and fear. I watch him load a clip into a Glock, the slide clicking shut with a satisfying snap. Put this on, he says, tossing me a smaller Kevlar vest. It's heavy, dragging at my shoulders. He helps me fasten the straps, his fingers brushing against my neck. His touch is electric, even through the fear. He lingers for a moment, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. I shouldn't have brought you into this, he murmurs, his eyes searching mine. I should have let you walk away that night in the ER. You didn't have a choice, I say. I saw too much. I had a choice, he corrects me. I could have killed you, that's the rule, that's the life, but I looked at you and I saw something I didn't know I still needed. I saw a life that wasn't soaked in blood. I was selfish, Alara. I wanted that for myself. My heart hammers against my ribs. It's the most honest thing he's ever said to me. He's not just a monster, he's a man trapped in a monster's world, desperate for a way out. We get the ledger, I say, my voice firm. We expose them, then we walk away. He smiles, a sad, crooked thing. It's never that simple, but for tonight, we survive. He grabs a bag, shoving extra ammo and the serrated knife from his boot inside. Let's go. We take Matteo's personal car, a sleek black Aston Martin that looks like it belongs on a racetrack, not in a Mafia war. We drive back toward the city, the engine purring like a predator. The hospital is dark when we arrive, save for the emergency lights flashing in the ambulance bay. The main entrance is blocked by police tape, but we aren't going in that way. Matteo parks in the shadow of the loading docks. He kills the engine. Stay close, do exactly what I say. If I tell you to run. You don't look back, you don't wait for me. I promise, I lie. We slip through a side delivery door. I use my keycard, it still works, thankfully, and we step into the quiet, sterile hum of the service corridor. It feels wrong. The place where I spend my life saving people feels like a tomb. The air smells of bleach and old coffee. We take the service elevators down to the basement. The doors open onto a long, dimly lit corridor lined with pipes and ventilation ducts. It's cold down here, damp. Storage B is this way, I whisper, pointing to the left. Matteo moves like a ghost, silent and fluid. He checks every corner, his gun raised and ready. I stick close to his back, my heart pounding so loud I'm sure he can hear it. We reach the heavy steel door of Storage B. It's locked. Matteo looks at me. I shake my head. I don't have a key for this one. He doesn't bother with keys. He pulls a small charge of C4 from his bag, just enough to blow the hinges. He sticks it to the door frame. Cover your ears, he mouths. I press my hands over my ears and squeeze my eyes shut. Thump. The sound is dull, muffled, but I feel the vibration in the floor. The door swings open, hanging by one twisted hinge. Matteo moves in first, sweeping the room with his tactical light. It's empty save for rows of metal lockers. Locker 42, I say. He finds it. It's an old, rusted locker at the end of the row. He uses a bolt cutters from his bag to snap the padlock. He pulls the door open. Inside is a black leather-bound book. The ledger. Matteo grabs it, shoving it into his jacket. Let's go. We turn to leave, but the doorway is no longer empty. 3 men stand there. They aren't wearing tactical gear this time. They're dressed in suits, looking like businessmen except for the pistols in their hands. Mr. Morty, the man in the front says. He's older, graying at the temples with a face like a withered apple. Ivan Volkov, we haven't had the pleasure. Ivan, Matteo says, his voice dripping with venom, I thought you sent your daughter to do your dirty work. She lacks finesse, Ivan says smoothly, And she failed. Now give me the book and the girl. I might let you live long enough to see your trial. Mateo laughs, a dark, humorless sound. You think you can take me, Ivan, here, in my city? I have 20 men upstairs, Ivan says. You have a nurse and a book. The odds are not in your favor. Mateo looks at me. His eyes are calm, terrifyingly calm. Ilara, remember what I said. Yes, I whisper, run. He doesn't wait for me to move. He fires. The shot takes Ivan in the shoulder, spinning him around. The other 2 men return fire. Mateo dives behind a row of shelves, bullets sparking off the metal, ricocheting wildly. I don't run, I can't. I see a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall next to the lockers. I grab it, pull the pin, and hurl it toward the doorway. FOO. The white cloud explodes, filling the narrow corridor, blinding the gunmen. Go, Mateo yells, grabbing my arm and dragging me through the smoke. We burst into the hallway. I hear shouting behind us, coughing, and the roar of more gunfire. We sprint toward the elevators, but the doors are closed. The stairs are our only option. We take them 2, 3 at a time. My lungs burn, my legs feel like lead. Mateo is practically carrying me, his grip on my arm iron. We reach the ground floor. The alarm is blaring now, strobe lights flashing red and white. We can hear the thunder of boots on the stairs above us. They're cutting us off, Mateo says. He looks around desperately. We're near the morgue. In here. He pushes me through the double doors of the morgue. It's freezing, the air heavy with the smell of formaldehyde. Rows of body storage units line the walls. Hide, he orders, shoving me behind a gurney. Don't make a sound. He takes up position behind a metal cabinet across the room, his gun trained on the door. Seconds later, the doors burst open. 2 men run in, guns drawn. They scan the room, their eyes sweeping over the gurneys, the cabinets. Mateo fires twice. Thump, thump. Both men go down before they even see him. But then more footsteps, more shouting, the sound of a shotgun racking. We can't stay here, Mateo says, grabbing my hand again. There's a tunnel for body transport. It leads to the incinerator room. It exits outside. He finds the heavy rubber door at the back of the room. He pries it open. A dark, claustrophobic tunnel stretches out before us. Get in. I crawl inside. It's tight, the rubber walls pressing in on me. Mateo follows, pulling the door shut behind us. We crawl in darkness. I can hear the sounds of the mob searching the morgue behind us, shouting orders, overturning gurneys. Keep moving, Mateo whispers from behind me. Don't stop. I crawl until my knees are raw, until the smell of formaldehyde is replaced by the acrid stench of burnt plastic and ash. I see a light ahead, the exit. I push through the rubber flaps and fall onto the concrete floor of the incinerator room. Mateo lands beside me. He's up instantly, gun raised. The room is empty. He grabs a metal pipe and wedges it under the door handle, jamming it shut. That won't hold them long, he says. He leads me to a heavy steel door on the far side of the room. He punches a code into the keypad. Beep click, the door opens, cool night air. We're outside behind the hospital near the dumpsters. We run for the Aston Martin. We're almost there. We're going to make it. A black sedan screeches around the corner, its headlights blinding us. It blocks our path. The window rolls down. Irina Volkov is in the passenger seat. She looks worse for wear, her suit torn, a bruise forming on her cheek where Mateo slammed her. She's holding a grenade launcher. End of the line, Mateo, she sneers. Mateo pushes me behind a dumpster. Get down. He raises his gun, but he knows it's useless against a grenade launcher. I look around frantically. We're trapped between the incinerator room and the sedan. No cover, then I see it. A steam valve on the side of the building. A massive pipe running along the wall. It's hissing slightly, leaking pressure. Mateo, I yell, the pipe. He looks, he sees what I see. He doesn't hesitate. He fires 3 shots at the valve. Ping, ping, boom, the valve explodes. A jet of scalding white steam erupts from the pipe, creating a massive wall of fog between us and the sedan. The screams of the men in the car cut through the steam. Mateo grabs me. We sprint through the steam, burning our skin, choking on the vapor. We scramble around the side of the sedan, slipping past the blinded driver. We reach the Aston Martin. Mateo throws me into the passenger seat and dives in. He starts the engine and we peel out, tires spinning, drifting around the corner and onto the main road. I look back. The steam is clearing. Irina is standing in the street, screaming, firing the grenade launcher blindly into the air. We're away. We drive in silence for miles. The adrenaline fades, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. I look at Mateo. His hands are shaking on the wheel. He's bleeding from a graze on his arm, soaking the sleeve of his jacket. You're hurt, I say. It's nothing, he says. We have the ledger, that's all that matters. He pulls the car off the highway, heading toward a secluded cliffside overlook that gives a view of the city lights below. He kills the engine. The city looks beautiful from here, peaceful. A sea of twinkling lights, oblivious to the blood and violence that just took place in its shadow. Matteo pulls the ledger from his jacket. He stares at it for a long moment, then he looks at me. This book, he says, his voice rough. It names names, dates, payments, politicians, judges, cops. It's the nuclear option. If I release this, the city burns. The Volkovs go down, but so does half the government. It's total war. Is that what you want? I ask. He turns to me, his eyes intense, searching. My face for a lie, for hesitation. He's looking for the nurse, the civilian, the woman who took an oath to do no harm. He's looking for permission to burn it all down. I want to live, he says, the words dropping like stones in the quiet car. I want to sleep without one eye open. I want to walk into a room without wondering who's going to put a bullet in my head. This book is the only way to get there. But it comes with a price. Collateral damage, I whisper, the image of the ER flashing through my mind, Gurney's blood, the innocent people caught in the crossfire of men like him. Collateral damage is inevitable in war, Alara, but this, he taps the leather cover. This is a massacre waiting to happen. If I use this, I become the thing I hate, a monster who destroys everything he touches to get what he wants. He looks at me then, really looks at me, and the hardness in his jaw cracks just enough to let the exhaustion bleed through. He's not just a mafia boss in this moment, he's a man carrying the weight of 1,000 sins, and he's asking me to help him decide if he should add 1,000 more. You're the only innocent thing in this equation, he murmurs. Tell me, what would you do? I look out at the city lights. They look like stars, distant and cold. I think about the oath I took. I think about the patients I couldn't save. I think about the way he looked at me when he thought I was going to die in that warehouse. I'd save the ones I can, I say finally, and I'd bury the ones I can't. He stares at me for a long, agonizing moment. Then a slow, dangerous smile spreads across his face. It's not happy, it's predatory. It's the smile of a man who has just been handed a loaded gun and told where to aim. Bury the dead, he repeats. I like that. He starts the car. The engine roars to life, shattering the silence. He doesn't head back to the estate. He turns the car toward the docks. Where are we going? To see a ghost, he says. There's one name in that book that matters more than the rest. The man who sold the Volkovs the access codes to my warehouse. The man who told them I'd be there tonight. He's the reason you almost died. He grips the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turn white. He's the reason I have to choose between war and death. He's the leak, Alara. And it's time to plug it. We drive through the industrial district, past warehouses that look like sleeping giants. The streets are empty here, the only light coming from the flickering street lamps. He pulls up to a nondescript building with a rusted sign that reads Luigi's Imports. Stay here, he orders, killing the engine. Lock the doors. If anyone comes near that isn't me, honk the horn, then drive. Don't stop for anything. Matteo. Stay here, the voice is steel. He gets out, the ledger tucked into his waistband. He checks his gun, then walks toward the building. I watch him go. He moves like a shadow, silent and deadly. He disappears through a side door. I sit in the silence, the ticking of the cooling engine the only sound. My heart is hammering against my ribs. I shouldn't be here. I should be at home, sleeping, getting ready for my next shift at the ER. But that life feels like a dream I woke up from. This, the violence, the danger, the man, is my reality now. Minutes tick by, 5, 10. Suddenly the side door bursts open. Matteo stumbles out, dragging a man by the collar. The man is terrified, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. It's Luigi, the owner. I've seen him at the hospital once or twice, brought in for a heart palpitation. Now he looks like he's about to have a heart attack for real. Matteo throws him against the hood of the Aston Martin. Luigi scrambles, trying to get away, but Matteo presses the barrel of his gun against the man's forehead. Tell her, Matteo snarls. Tell her what you did. I didn't mean to, Luigi screams, looking at me with pleading eyes. Alara, tell him, I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. They offered me money, a lot of money. My daughter, she has debts, gambling debts. They were going to kill her. So you sold me out. Matteo's voice is dangerously low. You gave them the codes. You told them about the ledger. Yes, I'm sorry. Please, I was just trying to save my